Alright, welcome to Lesson 2, Part 2 of Unit 7, Reflections. Here we're going to formalize the ideas that we saw in the first video, and I'm actually going to explain to you how the rules work. Hopefully you figured it out and got them right. If you didn't, that's alright. So first off, a reflection creates a mirror image. Okay, think about it, reflect, mirrors reflect. It's kind of where that comes from. So a line of reflection is the line the original is reflected over. So your x-axis, y-axis, that y equals x, those were lines of reflection. And reflections preserve some properties a bit more than the translations did. You have our original is still congruent to the image, so we're not actually changing size and shape. The thing that is changing, though, is the orientation of the object. It's like when you look in a mirror, you hold up your right hand, it looks like you're holding up your left hand in the mirror. The orientation is reflected here. So everything is reversed. So let's start with the x-axis, starting at the top with the rule. If we're going to go the original, if your original is at xy, the image you can figure out by taking that original and making it x opposite of y. Now that doesn't mean that y up just becomes a negative. It means that whatever y is, it changes. So our x stays the same and our y is changing signs. And one way you can see this written is little r x-axis. That's to say, reflect the x-axis. So here's an example. I'll go ahead and do one, and then have number 1 and have you guys do number 2 in your group. So if I'm reflecting A over the x-axis to A prime, my x is the same. My y is 4, so it becomes the opposite of 4, so it's negative 4. My b prime is now going to be the same x, but the opposite of y. So I want you to go ahead and pause the video now and do example 2 with your group. Okay, our c prime, our x is the same. We do the opposite of y, so negative 3 becomes 3. D prime, our x stays the same, and our y goes from a positive 7 to a negative 7, becomes the opposite. And that is reflecting over the x-axis. Next we're going to talk about reflections over the y-axis. And up here at the top, starting with the rule, we have our originals at xy, and our image, the point is opposite of x, and our y stays the same. We'll see the rule written as little r y-axis. So it's a similar idea to what we just did with the x-axis, so I want you to pause the video and work through this example 1 and example 2 with your group, and do that now. Okay, w prime. My x is going to the opposite, so negative 4 becomes positive 4. My y stays the same. X prime. My x is going to change, so negative 3 becomes positive 3, and my y stays the same. This point y, I have a positive 7 in the x coordinate. It becomes the opposite, so negative 7. My y coordinate stays the same, y prime, and my z prime. My 2 changes, so it becomes a negative 2, and then my y stays the same. Next we're going to talk about the line y equals x. I'm going to start up here with the rule. If our original point is at x comma y, then our image point is going to be y comma x. There's no changing of signs. All that happens is that the x and the y here switch places. So, just like in the previous, I want you to pause the video and work these two examples with your group now. Alright, so A prime, all we're doing is switching, so this becomes -2, 7. B prime, 5, -3. Example 2, C prime, 2, 4, and D prime, -1, -6. And finally, sometimes you'll have the lines x equals a number, y equals a number. And for these, there's no real rule that you're going to have. You just basically kind of count to see how far away it is from that line, and then you count the same distance on the other side. So there's not much of a rule for that. So this is the end of lesson 2, part 2, reflections.